we are also being joined by Nasir Salim. He's the managing partner at Flexi Capital. Dr. Alok Mishra is CEO and Director Microfinance Industry. Jayant Krishna, Senior Fellow Strategic and International Studies, CSIS. And we also have Saket Mishra, Investment Banker. We will be getting visuals from the Finance Minister's residence any moment now. Saket Mishra, I have the details of the big highlights of the economic survey right before me. And of course, it presents a picture of great hope and also optimism, and I should say silver line. But the opposition says that there is some kind of cherry picking which has been done in the data which has been put out in the economic survey.
Good morning, Maria. I think, look, opposition has a particular task, which is to question the government. But I do believe that what the PM said yesterday, that it's important that now that the elections are over, we all get together and get a consensus around our economy and what steps we're going to take. And I think it's very important that instead of just he said this and he said he did this cherry picking, we stop that, because the country actually has a lot of challenges. We've come out of COVID. We've come out of setting up a great foundation for future growth. But there is a need for some sort of look at where the middle class needs to get benefited, especially in a time when the finance minister's resources are higher than expected. We need to think about employment, and there it's not just a question of retooling, but it's also a question of what's going to happen with AIML. I think Soumya was talking about people who know Excel and basic programming. All those jobs are going to go with AI. So we need to think about that. And I think the third thing that the economic survey highlighted, and which again is incredibly important, is to relook at what we're doing with agriculture. It's not just about MSP or what not having income tax or what subsidies we are providing. Somebody needs to sit down, and by somebody I mean all people's representatives need to sit down and look at duplication of benefits, look at what is required to help the farmers achieve sustainability, both in terms of agriculture itself as well as in their livelihoods. So I think it's a good economic survey. The economy is in pretty good shape given all the challenges we have, and it's important that everybody gets together to take us to the next step.
Okay. And Jayant Krishna, your big takeaways from the economic survey.
So, I think while the survey has lowered the growth forecast, from RBI 7.2, they have made it, 6.5 to 7%. But they have talked about a robust, the public finance, and also talked about, high tax collection, which has been good, improved quality of spending. These things they've talked about, but let's not forget they've also flagged some. There are also some red flags in the economic survey. The most important red flag to my mind is they've talked about China. See, India refuses to learn from China. That's the impression I get time and again. We say we are a democracy. They are not, and they can do things which we can't. But that doesn't mean that a lot of things which are doable. See, they've talked about if India has to be a meaningful player in the global manufacturing supply chains, then as a prerequisite to that, it is very important that, India, our own supply chain plug-in happens vis-a-vis China. That's very important. They've talked about in the economic survey that, how, how do we balance, importing goods from China versus, soliciting capital from China. So I think these are very, very important things to my mind. And they've also talked about, how a high market cap to GDP ratio is not necessarily a symbol of, good economics, kind of, your economic, economy being in a good shape. Employment is what, again, they have flagged off. They've talked about, we need almost 78 to 80 lakh jobs per annum have to be added to the economy, by the year 2030. But more important dimension is how do we ensure that more and more employment happens in organized and formal sector vis-a-vis unorganized and informal sector. They've also talked about, ease of doing business while our ranking has improved. But, if we are the fifth largest economy, why shouldn't our ease of doing business rank also not be among the top 5 or perhaps top 10? So, these are very, very important things there. They have highlighted agro reforms. They've talked about, climate change agenda and so on and so forth. So to my mind, For the first time in last
Yes.
several years, the economic survey has talked about good things which have happened to the economy in the last so many years, and especially the current year. But they have also talked about some of the red flags, because the admission of what is not wrong with the economy is equally important if you have to take corrective steps. So I see as a welcome change in the economic
Absolutely.
survey.
Yes, and good economics is often seen as bad politics. But let's talk about the politics of the budget as well before I bring in the other two panelists. Sajjan, yesterday was the day, just ahead of the budget, the government reiterating that there is no question of special status to Bihar because the state doesn't qualify. It has given the reasons also, because the hilly states can get special status, but Bihar cannot. But the timing is, of course, something that has got the alliance partners worried. Should we expect some big bang announcements for Andhra Pradesh and Bihar?
The question is more about the detail. Of course, government has to cater to the aspiration and demands of two allies, TDP and JDU, Bihar and Andhra
But
Pradesh.
let's not forget there is elections in Maharashtra. So there's an alliance, another ally who's waiting for another his set of.
So that is why the detail matters.
Yes.
And when I say detail matters, whatever be the demand, up to 1.5 lakh crore is a demand by Andhra Pradesh, Chandrababu Naidu, and 1 lakh crore is demand by JDU. The government doesn't need to give them in one go.
Yes.
It can be given in phases. It doesn't need to be allotted by designated the states some sort of a special status. So government has the window to break it into different segments, and it can go on. A great deal of demand can be fulfilled in another 5 years. So that is why I do not think that the central government has a compulsion, as we assume, in terms of to accept and deliver the demand in this budget or in one go. So that way the central government has the leverage. Second, you also see a clear dichotomy into the economic realm and into the language of the political
language.
In economic realm, economic survey also says that government is looking for a grand alliance among the union government, state governments and the private player. So the language is very inclusive. They are wanting to include all spectrum of demographic dividends, and therefore all actors and stakeholders are invited, and the policy is also there. So I think despite the political temperature rising and language acquiring a sort of very apocalyptic
it's
area,
actually very nihilistic, almost.
Very nihilistic.
It sounds as if the doomsday is arriving.
Yeah.
Mithali, so let's focus on, can these states be given the special package? Special status is ruled out, but can the special package be given? Because as far as Andhra Pradesh Reorganization Act is concerned, that clearly talks about a special package for, Andhra Pradesh post the bifurcation of the state.
Absolutely. So 10 years into the creation of Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, the expectation is that the centre will provide additional support to Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, and Andhra Pradesh in particular, because Andhra Pradesh is primarily agrarian as an economy.
Right.
And, agriculture, farming, the Kisan, these are massive focus areas for the government nationally. Now, if you contrast this with the interim budget that came out in March, it was very clearly said East is a focus.
Yes.
Look East policy, but also Northeast, Bengal, Jharkhand and Bihar. All of these are our eastern states, Odisha as well. Now this time I expect East plus. So there will be
plus would be
Andhra Pradesh and also hill states in the north, Himachal and J&K. Because these are states that have been, lagging states for a long time. The climate conditions are, creating situations there where tourism is difficult to promote. There's only, the industries are difficult to promote, and now it's time to bring special packages to the hill states.
That's an interesting point there that you have put. Okay, so the visuals are now coming in of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman leaving her residence. She is the lady of the moment. All eyes will be on her. A lot of anticipation from her as she creates history today, and she will be arriving in North Block. That's where Aishwarya is. Aishwarya, I'm sure all the camera persons and the video journalists are parked at a spot where they can get a good picture of the finance minister and all the finance secretaries. I mean, all the bureaucrats of the finance ministry.
Well, certainly, and in just few minutes from now, we'll witness those iconic visuals of Nirmala Sitharaman along with the MOS Finance and also the officials of Finance Ministry coming outside and showcasing that tablet that Nirmala Sitharaman will be holding, and the budget will be presented. Remember, Nirmala Sitharaman is all set to make history as she will be presenting for the 7th straight time budget for this country. And Nirmala Sitharaman, we have been told, had left her residence. She'll be reaching shortly. Pankaj Chaudhary has already arrived at Finance Ministry. Let me show you these quick visuals from the Finance Ministry where, yes, of course, on one side there are a lot of media persons to catch that glimpse, and officials one after another arriving at the Finance Ministry as well. Just few minutes back, we have been told that along with the MOS Finance, it was also the Secretary of Ministry of Finance that had reached the Finance Ministry, and the security has also been tightened up because from here Nirmala Sitharaman will be straight away heading to Rashtrapati Bhavan, where the President will give nod to the budget, and later she will be going to the Parliament where Cabinet will approve that particular budget. But of course, all eyes on the Finance Ministry, and Nirmala Sitharaman is also to arrive over here, and that photo op opportunity would be here as Nirmala Sitharaman will be showcasing that tablet in which from which she will be presenting the Union budget today. So we are just waiting for Nirmala Sitharaman and other officials to arrive over here at the North Block.
Yes, so Finance Minister is going to arrive at North Block any moment now. And Soumya, Make in India has been the big thrust of this government. They are talking about an economy which is expanding. But at the same time, the focus certainly is on that tradition. That is what they have been talking about. Virasat and also as you look at the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and why not, right? Like Indians are making competition to Google Maps, and we are like for anything from traditional Ayurveda products to electric vehicles. I think we are capable enough to serve our country. So there is a large Indian consumer base, which everybody from other countries is also eyeing on. So why not make it for ourselves? And then at the same time, there are global SaaS companies which are being produced from India. So right from, how a salon is to be managed in somewhere in Europe to, what processor will go into which mobile phone being used somewhere in Australia. All of that is being made in India. And we look forward to what kind of, more policy-driven incentives could be given. So government has been launching PLIs. It will be interesting to see which all sectors come in the purview this time. We would also love to see some more, Mitali just spoke about the inclusion with state government and central government. So a lot has been done to promote industry, startups from the central side, but in terms of ease of doing business, in terms of dealing with authorities at the state level, if there are any incentives or measures that could be taken, it would be very gratifying to see those in the budget.
Yes. And we can hear the movement now. I think Finance Minister's cavalcade is actually going up the Raisina Hills. Those visuals would be coming in to you from the agency. But Nasir, thank you so much for your patience. And thanks to Dr. Alok Misra as well, who's joining us. Dr. Alok Misra, here is the government talking about supply chain disruptions and also talking about inflationary pressures. So are you expecting some kind of measures to be announced to tackle these? Nasir, if you heard me.
Yes, good morning, Maria, thank you very much for having me on
Okay, okay. Let me go straight to Aishwarya, who is where Finance Minister has just arrived. Aishwarya, over to you. What are you seeing? She is there, the lady of the moment, and Finance Minister is right there.
Well, let me show you these visuals from the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Finance Minister has now arrived at the Finance Ministry. Certainly, Nirmala Sitharaman will present her 7th straight budget on today for the fiscal 24 and 25, surpassing the record of former Prime Minister Morarji Desai. And she will be heading from here on directly to the Parliament, to the President's house. Remember, Nirmala Sitharaman, Finance Minister, along with MOS Pankaj Chaudhary and other senior officials of the Finance Ministry will step out and will give that iconic visuals of the budget as well. And from here on, she will be reaching to the President's house. But yes, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, when all eyes will be on her, just had arrived at the Ministry of Finance along with the other officials who accompanied her. Now in just few minutes from now, along with other officials, she will be coming out of the Finance Ministry. Nirmala Sitharaman had just arrived, as I mentioned, along with MOS Pankaj Chaudhary, who arrived a short while back at the Ministry of Finance, and we are just waiting for other officials, as the senior officials, as you can see in the visuals, also waiting for Finance Minister and the MOS Finance to step out of the Finance Ministry shortly while holding that budget in hand.
So the Finance Minister, who has just arrived at the North Block, has entered the North Block and she has gone up to her chamber, and thereafter she will be stepping down with the two MOS, the various secretaries of the Finance Ministry, the Finance Secretary, the Revenue Secretary and others. All of them will be stepping down and then there will be a photo opportunity that will happen there. So let me bring in other guests. Saket continues to be with us. We also have Jayant Krishna with us, and I believe we also have Alok Misra and Nasir Salim. If Alok Misra can hear me and Nasir Salim, as we have been... Okay, Nasir Salim, coming to you, the question that I had asked about, the supply chain challenges. Are you expecting some kind of announcement to counter those, to address those concerns?
Good morning, Maria. Thank you very much for having me on your show. Yes, supply chain remains a very important sector for, any good economic development. And I think one of the few things that we're looking out and we will clearly see is, more aid being given and more money being deployed towards capital expenditure, which has also been the trend in the last 5 years, whether it's in terms of infrastructure support, roads, ports. I think some of that will continue to play a very pivotal role in the way the budget should be expected to be announced as far as this entire supply chain is concerned. Number one. Number two, I think to your other question that you asked me, Maria, which is on, how inflationary pressures are continuing to catch up in the middle income group. The middle income class is subjected to, this high inflation, and so is the others. But I think the key point here is, what the budget is really looking forward to, is some tax rationalization, both on standard deductions and on capital gains. I think, if you look at some of the standard deductions, which is 80C, which is up to 1.5 lakhs, that can be increased hopefully to about 2 odd lakhs. That's the expectation from the industry. A lot of middle income group class will be benefited if that happens. There are also standard deductions available on housing loans. Now, housing loan and infrastructure, all of these play a very pivotal role again, Maria. And I think, with a lot of people participating in the real estate, transition of buying and owning properties, I think the principal component and the interest outlay that is paid out and the deductions available, those again, the deductions can be increased from the current. The other quick one is that, as I said to you, rationalization of capital gain. Being a former banker and a private wealth manager now, we strongly feel in the industry fields that I represent, that there has to be a rationalization on this in the effect to say that there are various asset classes, such as equity, fixed income, REITs, Gold, for example, is also a very important asset class, and real estate also. So all of these have different timelines and different taxation applications that get applied. In terms of capital gains. If that can also be that's also an expectation that be brought in to ensure that the inflationary pressure gets off from some of the members of the public.
Okay. Jayant, Krishna, my question is that in the interim budget, we did hear a lot of emphasis being put on the fact that there should not be any big bang announcement, but more to do with stability. Are you expecting the same this time around? Because I think the roadmap for the Viksit Bharat, as Prime Minister has been emphasizing on 2047, something that the Finance Minister did speak about in the interim budget, is that something which will be the big highlight, the big announcement to do with the infrastructure projects and the thrust certainly be on capex?
So, Maria, if you look at history of our budgets in the country, typically the first 2 years of any new government are the ones which are more reformist in nature. Because subsequently, they get into the election mode and so on and so forth, and then the reforms do not happen. So I personally definitely expect some big ticket reforms, not that everything can be spelled out in the budget, but some indication. I think our labor laws, despite some regrouping and recoding which has happened, on the ground, industry still faces the music, and especially at the state government level, because it is the labor laws are on the concurrent list, and many of the operative level state labor laws are actually at the state level. So, some reforms in that space, agro reforms are also very, very crucial. I mean, I somehow support the government on the agro reform they had brought about during the pandemic, but they had to be repealed because of political compulsions. But in some form, I think, if those reforms do not come, the farmers' income in real sense would not go up. So that's very important to my mind. Land acquisition bill, nobody wants to touch today. But acquiring land for industry, for infrastructure has become extremely difficult in the country. So somebody has to look at all these things. And more importantly, I would say, the spend on some critical areas of the economy. Healthcare, the public expenditure on healthcare is just about 2% of GDP. We have to double it. If we have to have universal health coverage for, 140 crore people, we have to go beyond Ayushman Bharat and we have to spend, increase that spend level. I keep talking time and again on education and skills. Again, the federal and the state governments put together, they spend just about little over 3% of our GDP. This also needs to be doubled if we have to, become, a developed economy by the year, 2047. I mean, we have the fifth largest nation in terms of GDP, but if you look at our per capita income, per capita GDP, we rank pretty low. If you look at the Human Development Index, which largely emanates from, healthcare, education, skills, quality of life indicators, there again our rank is very poor. So I think there have to be this budget, to my mind, could herald some of the big ticket changes in these kind of measures, and which measurability, every 3 years down the line from now till the year 2047, that, how our ranking on per capita income as well, per capita GDP as well as Human Development Index would improve, and the spending on healthcare, education, science and technology is another sector. We just spend about 0.7% on R&D, of our GDP on R&D, which is the lowest among all G20 countries, So unless we peg it up, unless we improve the ease of doing science and research in the country, how would we ever become a innovation-led economy? We are the fifth largest, we may become third largest also, but would we be an economy driven by innovation? I think that needs to be looked at. Look at our trade to GDP ratio. It has improved substantially. It's become 47% now. But a lot of people in India, especially the industry side, they still believe in higher import duties and so on and so forth, and some kind of a protectionism. So I think some of the FTAs with European Union, with UK, I think those need to be fast-tracked. Australia, we had at least the first level of FTA, but I think an expanded version of that would be required. And US, while no FTA is under discussion, but some on the trade front, I think some rethinking has to happen very clearly, because the more you'll protect your manufacturing from competition, indirectly you will promote relatively inferior goods to be there in the market, and it will also impede our export competitiveness. So I think these things, to my mind, are very important.
Okay.
And last but not the least, you talked about infrastructure. I think that's one area where this government has done pretty well in the last 10 years. Wherever I travel all across the country, and whenever you you find a country in the making, in the sense that there are flyovers, there are bridges, there are expressways happening everywhere. But we spend just about 3.4% of GDP. Most developed countries today, in their phase of high development, they were spending 4 to 5%, some of them even 6% of their GDP on infrastructure. So these things are very important to my mind, Maria.
Okay.